Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving straight into the deep end to objectively unpack the massive witness testimonies, the military logs, and the truly chilling evidence from 7 of the most famous UFO mysteries in history. We're going to examine the whole spectrum here, everything from massive silent craft hovering right over populated cities to localized military lockdowns, all the way down to deeply personal encounters that literally left physical scars. Now, picture this for a second. You step outside your home into the dark night. You look up and you realize that the sky itself is being blocked out by something silent, massive, and just entirely unknown. And you aren't alone, right? Your neighbors are out there, cars are pulling over on the highway, and an entire region is collectively witnessing an impossible structure right overhead. So what actually happens to our understanding of reality when an event of that magnitude occurs?
All right, part 1, Giants in the Sky, the undeniable mass sightings.
To really grasp the sheer scale of these phenomena, let's look at how the 1997 Phoenix Lights played out. We can track exactly how this massive event unfolded chronologically across Arizona. At 8:15 p.m., reports of a tight V-shape started rolling in from Prescott Valley. By 8:30, it had moved south over Phoenix, and it had evolved into this dark, solid triangle that literally blacked out the stars. Then, at 10 p.m., a secondary event happened. A straight arc of glowing orbs just hovered over the city before winking out one by one, dropping behind the Sierra Estrella Mountains. And what's wild is the consistency of the witness accounts. People, including local cops and veteran pilots, described a craft of just incomprehensible size, gliding completely silently overhead. As this quote highlights, they were looking at objects bigger than multiple football fields that emitted zero engine noise, even though they were flying incredibly low. I mean, imagine seeing that. Now, here's where we hit a stark contrast between the military's official explanation and the visceral reality of what citizens actually saw. Skeptical analyses suggest those 10 p.m. lights perfectly match military LU-2B/B high-altitude illumination flares. Okay, fair enough. But that official explanation completely ignores the 8:30 p.m. sightings. That's when thousands of people, including the state's governor, by the way, looked up and saw a solid, structured triangular craft blocking the stars at close range. But hey, the Phoenix Lights wasn't a one-off. Jump back a decade to the Hudson Valley between 1983 and 1986. Thousands of cosmopolitan professionals reported a similarly massive object. We're talking over 5,000 residents describing a silent, V-shaped craft that they literally called a floating city of lights. And sure, some tried to brush it off as a hoax by local stunt pilots, but witnesses, including computer engineers and police officers, insisted the object was the size of a football field, only had a faint mechanical hum, and moved way too slowly to be any kind of conventional airplane. Moving on to part 2, military secrets and cover-ups, when the government steps in. So the stakes definitely change when we zoom in from civilian mass sightings to direct localized encounters involving active military. Take December 1965. The small town of Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, transformed in a flash from a quiet village to an armed military zone. A flaming fireball crossed 6 U.S. states. Locals ran into the woods and claimed they found this weird acorn-shaped craft about the size of a VW Beetle, and it was ringed with symbols that looked like Egyptian hieroglyphs. Almost immediately, the military showed up, locked down the perimeter, and witnesses say they hauled the object away on a flatbed truck. While the locals were convinced they saw an alien craft, the official story leaned hard into Cold War realities. Space experts, and later NASA, suggested it was actually Cosmos 96, which was a failed Soviet space probe. And really, this just perfectly showcases the intense paranoia of the era. Whether it was extraterrestrial or just highly classified foreign tech, the government's reflex was immediate, total secrecy, leaving us with what a lot of folks now call Pennsylvania's Roswell. Let's cross the pond to December 1980 in England. The multi-day Rendlesham Forest incident gives us a super chilling chronological record of base security literally walking into the unknown. It happened in the woods between 2 American air bases. Airmen spotted strange lights the first night. Then, the next night, Deputy Base Commander Colonel Charles Halt led a team into the forest. They recorded actual radiation readings on the trees and encountered this zigzagging, glowing red object that moved toward a farmhouse before suddenly breaking into 5 white balls and vanishing. And right in the thick of that suspense, Colonel Halt did something unprecedented. He recorded a live audio tape while the investigation was happening. It captured this terrifying reality where their advanced military tech just stopped working. Floodlights, radios, you name it, inexplicably malfunctioning. leaving these highly trained soldiers completely vulnerable out there in the dark. Which brings us to part 3, Close Encounters and Abductions, the Psychological Impact. As we go deeper into this explainer, the encounters get much more intimate. It's really about how these events fundamentally alter a person. Take Labor Day weekend in 1969. Ordinary citizens in idyllic Berkshire County, Massachusetts, had their lives changed forever. From a 10-year-old kid named Tommy Warner to a respected 42-year-old woman named Jane Green, residents reported being totally paralyzed by an eye-level, perfectly silent craft. And because they were so afraid of being ridiculed, these people kept this terrifying secret to themselves for 50 years before finally opening up about it. You see a similar kind of dread perfectly captured in the 1976 Allagash case. 4 young men were canoeing in the remote wilderness of Maine when they watched this massive glowing orb just hovering over the water. But here's the bizarre part. Instead of staying up all night freaking out about this impossible thing they just saw, they experienced this weird, hypnotic fatigue. They literally just went to sleep. It actually took years for the true psychological toll of that trip to surface. The men started having these horrific nightmares about medical probes and non-human entities. They finally realized that their strange fatigue was actually masking hours of missing time. So they sought out UFO researchers, and under rigorous polygraph testing and hypnosis, their terrifying matching stories completely held up, cementing Allagash as a deeply disturbing psychological mystery. Finally, part 4, the physical toll, scars of the unknown. This is where the escalation becomes undeniable, when the unknown leaves devastating physical scars. 23. That is exactly how many unmarked military helicopters witnesses counted during the 1980 Cash Landrum incident in Texas. Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and young Colby Landrum were driving on a rodal highway when they were aggressively pursued by a massive diamond-shaped craft throwing off blistering heat. And that craft was, in turn, being chased by an absolute swarm of military Chinook helicopters. What's totally unique about this case is the debate over where the craft actually came from. Ufologists were quick to say it was extraterrestrial, but the victims themselves entirely disagreed. They didn't blame aliens at all. They blamed the US government. They fully believed they were collateral damage from a highly classified, malfunctioning nuclear-powered aircraft, and they even sued the government for the suffering they endured. And let me tell you, that suffering was profound. The physical toll on Betty Cash was horrific. She spent weeks in the hospital fighting debilitating nausea, severe blinding headaches, totally unexplained skin lesions, and eventually dramatic hair loss. Honestly, it read like a textbook case of severe ionizing radiation poisoning. Yet somehow, mysteriously, her blood tests kept coming back negative, leaving her doctors completely baffled, and forcing the victims to fight for the rest of their lives just to be heard. So as we wrap up this explainer, we're left staring at the night sky with a pretty chilling realization. Whether these objects are high-altitude flares, old Soviet space debris, secret nuclear black projects, or something entirely beyond our world, they leave behind very real scars. They leave behind malfunctioning equipment, missing time, and a mystery that absolutely demands our attention. So the next time you look up at the stars, you really have to ask yourself, what is actually staring back?